Introduction to 2020, A New American Covenant. Our book addresses Latin American Catholics, American Mormons, and every evangelical Protestant and Pentecostal Christian from Alaska to Argentina. People who share the belief our founding fathers had with other great pioneers, believing America is the promised land of the saints and the new Israel. The year 2020 can be a hallmark of human evolution in the Americas if the prophecy taken from St. John Paul and Ronald Reagan can be fulfilled by President Trump and President Bolsonaro of Brazil. And this is why.
Our invitation is to Pope Francis to go to St. Paulo in Brazil, and consecrate the new Temple of Solomon, the largest cathedral in the New World, built the year he became Pope. And it transitions from the Passion of Christ to the Passion of Paul in Rome, with St. Luke as his mentor. Dear Pope Francis, greetings from Washington State, once called God's country when George was senior. Here is a picture. My son and I built a memorial chapel for our Saint John Paul, who I spent an afternoon with in New Zealand in 1986. Now, I am sending you my book, for it has an important message from St. John Paul. I write it like Luke, so to speak, who was played by Jim Caviezel in the story of Paul after the Passion of Christ. The story begins in 1970, sharing the born-again experience with Franklin Graham, so to speak, after university in Mexico, then being sent to Greece by our Greek Archbishop in Dallas in 1981 to wind up in Pristina, Bosnia, to witness the true beginning of Medjugorje with the assassination attempt of Pope John Paul then. And the follow-up in Christchurch with the afternoon sit, greet, and meet 2-on-2 with the Pope and the Bishop of Wellington, with my host from Alexandria, Virginia, to witness another Fatima message from the sky.
The nations of South America must join North America in seeking the better way we inherited from our founding fathers with a constitution and the Monroe Doctrine that says Russia or China or Europe in Cuba, Nicaragua, or the Falklands will not build military bases on our continent, like China bought land from dictator for life Manuel Ortega for a new Chinese Silk Road and canal through Nicaragua, with a smile and a nod from our then President Obama, who was singing psalms with Hugo Chavez and the Iranians flying in and out of Venezuela with drugs for money. Just remember, Chavez's daughter escaped from Venezuela to Switzerland with a $30 billion bank account. How did I know? I was married to a television personality lady in Venezuela during that time, from a top military family and from the National University of Venezuela. They knew the score from Chavez and Obama. So now, in 2020, a new political and economic alliance must dispel the influence of dictators from China and Russia and Europe, whose fascist socialist traditions have copied the cons in the mass extermination of people and their identities and their ideas, simply because they can. Now we must bring all the Americas together responsibly as one nation in spirit and in commerce under God. For here is the real question from Jesus that we must answer. Jesus was pointing to and looking at something in his imagination when he said to Peter, "Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld will not prevail against it." Two very important words here, church and netherworld. Jesus did not get down on his knees to Peter, to someone who habitually betrayed him, to the Jews, saying, "Oh, Peter, you are my rock, and I'm going to cling to you and build my church on you." No, not likely. Jesus was addressing something in his imagination opposite the netherworld of karma. Caesar Augustus knew this and read him well, saying, "The city of Rome is an eternal idea in the mind of God." So what, may we ask, was Jesus referring to, saying he would build his church upon it? Well, to answer that, we need science, reason, logic, history, and truth, not religion, not now. A great historian of Reagan's generation, Arnold Toynbee, once said that death entered the Garden of Eden from Mongols who had invented compound bows on little horses to ride west to Russia, Eastern Europe, and India to hunt and kill simply for the pleasure of it. What tree were they eating from? It wasn't the olive tree. But now we know from this book of geologic history, death entered the lands of Eden when the glaciers melted 12,000 years ago and rivers filled the sea and fresh water returned as rain. Man would learn and know about good and evil. Now, this becomes essential to our understanding of human history, and we will reveal this from our 20-year study with my geology department, discerning exactly who the first Americans really were and who the final Americans will be, and how humans evolved from African apes 6 million years ago when Gibraltar closed the gates to the Atlantic and the Mediterranean Sea became a very wide and deep river valley where apes became tool-making humanoids, leaving Africa behind. Then Gibraltar reopened 3 million years ago, sending these proto-humans out into the world of Europe and the Middle East as Adam and Eve, until the last day of creating the world for man and man for the world, that Adam and Eve became peoples of the seas. Lastly, 200,000 years ago, the ice ages captured 400 feet of ocean, giving man a world of great river valleys again, like the Red Sea River Valley that reached to India. And in this new Garden of Eden, a people called the people of Noah finally evolved as tool-making and boat builders in the valleys of the Adriatic, the Sea of Marmara, and the Pontus, now called the Black Sea, which was a shallow saline lake when sea levels were 400 feet lower. So, no, not on top of Suleiman's Arafat, but on the mountains covered in Eastern Europe with glaciers that flooded into the Black Sea, floating Noah's people and their boats down from the valley of the Danube River to where Hagia Sophia once was, under the Eastern Star. This story was revealed to me by a spirit guide our psychology, geology, anthropology department called the Kennewick Man, discovered on the shores of the Columbia River in 1996 with our guy Jim Chatters. We tell this story now for the idea of evolution, as it becomes very important in saving the Americas and the world here coming 2020 from what could come if the ontology of Rome becomes the new world order. What does that mean? It means that Mussolini with fascism and Hitler, with socialism combined with Lenin, Stalin, and Mao, to co-create communism, consolidated what Genghis Khan and all the Mongols before had seen in their imaginations that prevailed as evil from the gates of the netherworld, as they slaughtered millions just for the sport of it. What if Rome bore with Mussolini and his followers that upon the world now? Do you see? In evolutionary thought, man's fulfillment in God's eyes is a function of Pilgrim's Progress and all the people who understood Martin Luther, as our founding fathers did, like Benjamin Franklin, dancing over France in memory of Joan of Arc, who was burned at the stake by the church, like the children of Fatima were told was going to happen to them. Yes, if there was a patent upon evil, then it rides with the horseman from Khan, who finally arrived at Moscow again from Italy and Germany, as St. Malachi and Malachi Martin, the Vatican exorcist, said, that the Polish patriot John Paul would be the last true pope and the last person to wear the shoes of the fisherman. Go ask Benedictine Pope Rothinger. So here is our spiritual mission and calling to the event of Solomon's Temple, the largest in the Americas, just built in Sao Paulo, Brazil, under the gaze of Christ the Redeemer in Rio. Oh yes, this was the year Hugo Chavez passed away and Obama faded into the woods. So now our true presidents, Bolsonaro and President Trump, have both pledged allegiance to America and God, as our founding fathers did. And both are seeking how to make all the Americas great for once. Can it be? This book explains how it can be and why it must be from the point of view of In God We Trust. I tell you, if King Arthur were alive today, he would say Venezuela is his sword's rock of captivity. It must be drawn from. No, this book is not commentary or speculation. The author met both Reagan and Pope John Paul and tells of driving truck, car, and riding bus from Alaska to Argentina with nearly every state and territory of Mexico and Central America included. Encounters with very special people in Mexico, Central and South America. If this book on Amazon qualifies as prophecy, then it says America and Brazil must work together with their new presidents to do what John Paul and Reagan did when they liberated Poland and Eastern Europe from socialist occupation. Oh my God. We show why this can be interpreted as a divine code for the Americas, not like the Da Vinci Code, but rather the Michelangelo Code. Not Lucia's secret, but Reagan and John Paul's deeds of goodness for goodness sakes. John Paul revealed this to me in his personal meditations a decade after we spent an afternoon together in the hills above Christchurch, 2-on-2, seeing in the skies of John Paul's imagination later from Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel that ironically was financed by Martin Luther's Christian followers, who paid the price in more ways than one. This is why God's plan for America will be revealed through Father and Son and Holy Spirit in a Trinity at Solomon's Temple in the Americas, Brazil, preserving our traditions and freedom founded upon personal responsibility. Like Augustus said, Caesar Augustus, the kingdom of heaven is an eternal idea in the mind of God.